slept very poorly. Very poorly. I'll tell you about it after the fourth bell. But let's drink. So remember, your setup is very personal. The practice of mindfulness in and of itself is very personal. You're interacting with your internal environment. You're not interacting with someone else's. Now, the ultimate goal is to bring the best version of yourself more often than not to the table whenever you're showing up for anything. But in terms of the practice, this is your call. Is where you train in the mornings the place that you like? What makes it the place that you like? I like my garage because I know that my children and my wife won't hear me. I know that I've got, predictability, I've got stability, I've got consistency. Those are all things that kind of cue me externally, and then internally, when I'm looking for comfort, I've got my cushion, I've got this square cushion underneath me, and then I'm able to square away my hips, my knees, so I'm good to go. So that's how I get settled. And so make that decision for yourself. What cues you to comfort? What cues you to safety? Okay? So establishing that, come to first bell. I'm just going to close my eyes right away. Sleepy. Just listen. Just zoom in. What do you hear? Where do you hear it? And wherever you hear that sound, kind of position it. If you're, imagine where you're sitting is the center of a clock. And, project your 12 out in front of you, your 3 to the right, behind you 6, to the left of you 9. So that's like your 360 degrees of awareness with sound. And where on the clock is the sound? Where on it? So for me, there's the sound of the refrigerator at about 2 o'clock. And then the rest is empty. There's no other sound in here. I can visualize it in my mind. I can hold that visual too. If I project the clock outside of the house in my head, I can't really hear anything. So now taking care of sound and settled into my senses, connect more closely, sense of touch, kind of aspects of touch are showing up today. I feel the pressure of my shirt. Smell, taste. Second bell. Now, right beneath me, right? So I made a clock. Right beneath me at the very, very center of the clock is my ground. It's what I'm sitting on. It's kind of interesting to create this visual of, this clock, right? The clock of awareness. I've gone from external now to very much right beneath me. So I've just shifted my focus. My focus has gone from out to right beneath. And so now I'm going to kind of work from the inside of my body. I'm going to take this same awareness, move to the inside of the body, starting with ground. And so I just notice how I'm balanced. Is my body kind of centrally balanced, or is it leaning? Once I have central balance, come to the pelvis. Now, when I often think about the pelvis, I think about a bowl. But now I'm shifting that, and I really want to think about not the bowl, but the kind of the base of the bowl. And the base of the bowl is less like a bowl. It's less rounded and more of a kind of a, I don't know what to call it. But there are these things at the base of my pelvis called sit bones. And these bones are kind of like a teeter-totter, right? They kind of, I envision them as perches, right? Like, so if I picture a bird perched on a wire, I imagine the sit bones as like that wire. And so my body is kind of perched on top of those sit bones. And if I picture the sit bones, they're kind of, right next to each other. In between them is my anus, right? So the sit bones are on the either side of that. And what I imagine about that space is that space kind of spreading out. So imagine the sit bones kind of spreading away from each other. The inside of the bowl of the pelvis kind of spreading out. Like the notion of your butthole puckering, where everything gets pulled up inside you, or freezing up. Everything just gets kind of pulled in, yanked in, held back. So when I picture this region, I'm picturing it as opening out. So there's like more space at the base. And from there I come up to the core region, the space in between the belly button and the lumbar spine. And so there's this urge to kind of pull everything in. There's a kind of pull up from the bottom, pull in from the front. And it feels weird to resist. But as I keep kind of this feeling of openness, kind of build up from the base to the core, to the heart space. Same kind of opening, same kind of feel. There's a cascade effect, an opening at the base, an opening at the core, and then an opening across the heart and the shoulder blades. Very open. Really a column, like a silo. It's got lots of space. And then, so it's a big silo, and then when I get to my throat, it's like a little silo. It's like a tube. So instead of this massive silo with all this space, it's now this kind of column, big pipe. So I've softened the opening of the bottom of the pipe, which is kind of my heart space area. Now I'm trying to facilitate that same softening in my jaw. Just open, broad, open, 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 open. Notice breath there. Not focused on breathing yet, just noticing breath there. Now I've noticed a new sound in my sound, my sound space in my clock of awareness, and it's at 8 o'clock. It's behind me. It's outside the house. It's birds, about 3 of them. It doesn't take me away from what I'm doing. I'm just registering it. So now I've got, there's me in the center. There's the fridge at 2, the birds at 8. Now come to my face. And just really focusing on letting everything from the face be without effort. Very strategic, going through each kind of part of the face, chin, lips, nose, cheeks, eye muscles, forehead, even the head, the back of the head. Going to third breath or third bell. And now I'm going to take my hand, I'm going to put it on my chest. I'm going to practice this yield breath. So I'm going to really work on taking a full inhale, feeling the inhale, move my hand. And then as I exhale, I'm going to push on my sternum. And I feel it kind of push back against me as I breathe back in. And exhale, push on the sternum. Inhale out. Exhale, push on the sternum. Now what I'm making sure I'm not doing is tensing anywhere else. Let it go as I breathe out. Now just notice breath without any of the pressing. Big inhales, big exhales. Now I'm just going to sit quietly for a minute. All right. So on the 28th stanza of The Art of Peace. And this is still building off of kind of the inner work. There's so much to The Art of Peace that has to do with being in a state that is capable of greatness, or more. Your internal state facilitates your kind of ability to be the best version of yourself, and depending on what's going on inside of you is kind of how well you'll navigate any particular situation. And if you're struggling with certain aspects of your inner experience, it's just going to be much harder to find the flow inside the moment. And this is very much appropriate for me at the moment, because I really struggle with this. I really struggle with addiction, I guess. Just I kind of imagine that I have things under control because there's not some kind of pronounced negative effect. But it's just a kind of a degree of negative effect. I mean, just because I'm not, sloppy drunk doesn't mean there's not a negative effect on my body when I drink on a very regular basis. The impact that it has on my sleep, the impact that it has on my anxiety, the impact it has on my kind of understandings of what's comfortable and when I'm the most chill. Interacting with alcohol is really just fundamental to my life, and it has a negative impact. Now, it doesn't have the kind of negative impact that, shows up in movies, but it has the kind of negative impact where I'll think about what I'm going to drink at the end of the day early in the day. It'll be something that pops into my head. And it had an impact on my sleep last night. So this is an area that, is very much in my awareness, in my own personal practice. And so here's the 28th stanza. The only cure for materialism is the cleansing of the 6 senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. If the senses are clogged, one's perception is stifled. The more it is stifled, the more contaminated the senses become. This creates disorder in all the world, and that is the greatest evil of all. Polish the heart, free the 6 senses, and let them function without obstruction, and your entire body and soul will glow. So I interpreted that as what you look at, what you listen to, what you eat, what you do with your body, and what you think and what you think is who you are in the world. Are you more or less dark? And so that's where I'm working on. That's what I'm working on. And I'm challenged by it, because I think about instances where I would be sad if there wasn't kind of a drink to go with it, right? So, going to families' houses, going to friends' houses, doing events, stuff like that. The thought of not having a drink, or the thought of just, just being sober, right? So what he's taught with, when he says perception, that's what that is. My I know that in the times that I have been totally sober, I've gotten to a place where I'm much more clear-headed. I sleep better. My body operates at a higher level. I weigh less. But I also feel like I'm more bored. I'm less stimulated. Things are less fun. And that's what that stanza is all about. So don't ever think that because I'm teaching this, I've, mastered it or am in any way, shape, or form an ideal expression of the art of peace. I'm working at it just as much as everyone else, I guess. Anyway, thanks, Armor Down. I'm going to sleep better tonight, I hope. And I'll see you tomorrow.